Now, something I'd like to do with this bouncing is that if I hit it on the edge of the paddle, I'd like it so it bounces off at a sharper angle. So if the ball comes in and hits this side of the paddle, I'd like it to kind of bounce off in this direction more. If it hits on this side, I'd like to bounce it off in this direction more. Or if it's right in the center, I want it to be more like a mirror reflection. The idea being that gives you a little more control over the direction the ball goes, because otherwise you could get in a pattern where it just does a diamond shape forever, and you can't actually get at all the bricks. So I'm going to do a little bit of a calculation where basically if the ball's on this side, so if its x compared to this x is to the left, it adds to the direction in this counterclockwise way. If it bounces on this side, so if the ball's x is to the right of the paddle's x, I want to subtract, and then we'll use that same positive direction command to make sure it stays in the 0 to 360 area. Let's go back to the bounce command. So if I hit something from above, so right here, this section, where I checked after I've added 2 to the y position, let's check and see if the thing we hit is the paddle. So we can go grab the paddle's index, which matches up with this collision index. What it does, it basically checks, is this thing in the array the same index as whatever it was you hit with? If this is the case, we need to change the direction of the ball itself. So direction is going to be direction plus, then I'm going to do a calculation based on basically the midpoint of the ball and the midpoint of the paddle and compare their x positions. So I'm going to take the paddle's x minus its sprite width over 2. So it's going to subtract 24 in this case. And then I'm going to subtract the ball's x. Wait a minute, this needs to be a positive. I'm taking the x position and then adding half of the width to get to the midpoint. There we go. So plus the sprite width over 2. And then I don't know how much I want to add to the angle, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole calculation and multiply it by some factor. So I'm going to start with just times 1, and then I can change this number, so if it's too severe of a change to the direction, I can make this like 0.5 or 0.2 or something like that. If it needs to be a lot more, if it's not having enough of an effect, then I can change it to something more like 2 or 3 or 3.5 or whatever it is it needs to be. So let's go try this out. If I hit here, so you notice it went more of in an upright direction. So that went off the edge here. Ooh, I just realized if it's too close to an exact angle, it might try to go into the paddle itself when I add to that direction. So I should probably correct for that. So if my direction is greater than, well, we don't want 180 or more, so maybe it's greater than 179. Then I'll set direction equal to 179. If direction is, well, let's see, less than 1, I suppose. Direction equals 1. And I should probably make sure this whole thing becomes a positive direction. So this whole thing is going to get surrounded by that to make sure it stays in the 0 to 360. Make sure I didn't screw anything up. Good. Good. So you notice it went off at a much steeper angle. Good. I think we're ready to add in the actual stones in the game now. I'm going to add in a couple different brick types. Maybe I'll take these two to start with. So I'm going to grab this guy and this guy. So to make sure I can use those, I'm going to add those to my list of preloads. Stone01.gif and stone02.gif. add those to my locations. Brick 1 location is going to be stone01.gif, and brick 2 location is going to be stone02.gif. Now I may want to add a series of these, so rather than trying to make them preloaded things, I think I'm just going to create them in loops in the setup here, so that I can add a whole bunch at once. I don't really fancy the idea of putting in 10,000 lines of code just to add in all the bricks. So I'm just going to make a line of these, starting at, well, let's see, 32 in, I suppose. I'm going to keep going while it's within the 600 minus 32 range. And then I'm going to add 32 each time. So it's going to jump over 32 each time I add one of those stones in. Because if I look at the stones themselves, dimension of 32 by 16. All right, let's create a new game object. Sure, I'll give it a temporary name, brick1. The name gets thrown away as soon as I leave the for loop, so it doesn't really matter. Game object, a maybe 100 down. Something like that. This is going to be solid. And let's see what that looks like. Yeah, this is that problem with the even spacing. Ideally what I'd want to do is make sure that my arena was divisible by 32 if I was going to use these 32 stones. Since this is just a demo, I'm going to leave that for now, but that's the idea, is that you would want to fix that next. All right, so those are my bricks. Let's add in some brick 2 as well. So I'm going to do exactly the same loop and just put them a little further down. I guess I'll call this temporary thing brick 2. And then that's 16 down from where it was, and then the brick 2 location. And brick 2 will also be a solid, so the ball bounces off of it. All right, so it bounces off. Now I need to be able to destroy this thing. So when it does a collision, I want to make sure that the brick itself dies. Now at the moment, the collision code isn't being called in the update command. So I'm going to need to add that to the section where I added the bounce in to see if it actually is going to be destroyed. Now I don't have access to this name here, brick 1 or to brick 2. So I'm going to need some other way to keep track of whether or not it's actually a brick. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to add in something called a class tag, where I'm going to check to see if the thing that I just hit, if it is a brick. So all of these brick 1s, their class tag is going to be a brick. It's the same idea as in Unity, using tags to figure out what kind of things objects are. And brick 2's class tag will also be a brick. Now at some point I'm going to need to be able to distinguish between these two, though, in order to see how many points they're each worth. So I'm also going to add in an ID tag, which is going to be unique to the types of bricks. So this will be brick 1 as an ID tag. So they're all bricks, but we can also distinguish which kind they are. So once I actually collide with this thing, these bricks, I need to make sure that I can actually bounce off of them. So that's going to be back way down here. Where's my update objects? There you are, right after the bounce. Was the thing that I hit a brick? So if the objects at that collided index, similar to what I did here, if their class tag is brick, then we're going to need to destroy them. The objects of that collided index dot destroy. Berk2 is not defined. I should probably fix that. Berk2 is not defined. Brick2 is. Alright, so that's the second brick. Can I get it to hit the first ones? There we go. So they all get destroyed.